Hello students, we are discussing about web technology. In today's topic we are going to see about OLEDB connection string. OLEDB is nothing but a database, so we are going to connect our data to our data source. Let us get into the topic. The contents we are going to discuss here are OLEDB command, OLEDB connection, OLEDB connection string builder, and we are going to discuss about the close method, open method, and how to link our data to our data source. Now what is OLEDB, and we are going to discuss about what is an OLEDB object and how we can connect our data into a data source. An OLEDB object represents a unique connection to a data source with the client or server database system. It is equivalent to a network connection to the server. An OLEDB object represents a unique connection to a data source. That is, an OLEDB is a database that is a unique data source which we are going to use for network connection. With the client or server database system, it is equivalent to a network connection to the server. That is, with the client or server data, we can have a database both in client system as well as the server system. It is equivalent to a network connection to the server. So the OLEDB connection is similar to the connection we have in the server. When you create an instance of OLEDB connection, all properties are set to their initial values. That is, whenever we are going to create an OLEDB connection to our data source, the initial values will be set for all the properties in OLEDB connection. For a list of these values, see the OLEDB connection constructor. So, to set the initial values for all the properties in OLEDB connection, we have OLEDB connection constructor that will create and initialize the values for the properties. When you create an instance of OLEDB connection, all the properties are set to their initial values. For the list of these values, see the OLEDB connection. You can open more than one data reader on a single OLEDB connection. That is, data reader is nothing but it is going to read the data from our data source and it will connect to our database. So we can open more than one data reader on a single OLEDB connection. So one single OLEDB connection can have any number of data readers. So this is known as the OLEDB connection. It is a data source. Now we are going to see about OLEDB connection string. The OLEDB connection instance in ASP.NET is responsible for establishing a connection to a data source, taking the connection string as an argument during initialization. So we have so much of properties in our OLEDB connection string. In order to initialize the values, we have to take the argument and pass that argument for initialization. We have to initialize the values for all the properties in OLEDB connection. How we are going to initialize? We are going to pass the argument to the string and that is going to be the values for our properties. It will be initialized to our properties. That is, the OLEDB connection instance in ASP.NET is responsible for establishing a connection to a data source. It is going to establish a connection between our data, users data and the data source. Then after connecting, we have to initialize the values for all the properties in our OLEDB connection. That is done during the initialization. How initialization happens? The arguments we have passed to the string will be the values for the properties. So the values will be initialized in this manner. This connection object is designed to work with OLEDB data provider, enabling seamless communication between ASP.NET application and the specified data source. So after the connection of our OLEDB database and our data source, there will be a seamless communication. That no one can interrupt the communication or nothing can stop the communication between our ASP.NET application and our specified data source. The data source can be any kind of data that the user provides for our program. The main aim of OLEDB is to connect our ASP.NET application to our specified data source. One of the specific data source we use is OLEDB. This is an OLEDB connection. We have an ADO.NET, we have an OLEDB and now we have ODBC. So according to ages, we have been upgrading our database management. The OLEDB.NET data provider pools connections by using underlying service of the OLEDB source pooling. Here we have number of options to configure, enable or disable resource pooling. First we have to use the resource string, next we have to use the registry, avoid if you have to circumvent registry related issue, next we have to programmatically use the connections. So we have to connect our OLEDB with our ASP.NET source. Okay. Now we are going to discuss about OLEDB command. What is a command? A command is an instruction we are going to give our application to do some certain work. Upon establishing the connection between ASP.NET application and the data source, SQL commands can be executed using the command object to retrieve or manipulate data within the database. So what does a database contain? Database contains n number of data. How we are going to retrieve a specific data which a user needs from the database? We are going to use SQL commands. So each SQL commands will be significantly different in order to help the user to retrieve the data from the database. The command object acts in conjunction with the OLEDB connection, allowing for the execution of SQL statements and stored procedures. We can call commands as instructions, procedures, source codes, or it can be anything. So the every SQL command have a corresponding command object. It will play a bridge role between OLEDB connection, our SQL statements, and other stored procedures. So command object stands as a bridge between OLEDB connection and execution of SQL statements. So in order to connect an OLEDB connection with the data source, we need SQL commands. For executing the SQL commands, we need one command object. That command object will be available and that establishes the connection between ASP.NET application and the database. This is how we have to write the command to establish OLEDB connection between ASP.NET and our database. We have to use the keyword dim connection string. The connection string, that specifies that we are going to connect the string, and the values we are going to give in the argument will be the values that our properties are initialized. Dim connection string as string, dim connection as OLEDB connection. Next we have initialized the string, and now we are going to initialize the OLEDB connection. Now we are going to give the arguments. Connection string is equal to configuration manager dot connection strings. Within the parenthesis we have to specify the arguments OLEDB connection to string. So the OLEDB connection is the argument we are going to pass through configuration manager to connect the string. What we are going to connect? Our ASP.NET application and the database. That will be connected with the parameter OLEDB connection. Now we have passed the argument. Now we are going to create a connection. So connection is equal to new OLEDB connection. Within the parenthesis we are going to pass the connection string, that is which is the string that is going to connect our ASP.NET and our database. So the general syntax is dim connection string as string, dim connection as OLEDB connection. So we are going to establish a OLEDB connection. So we have to give it as connection as OLEDB connection. Now we are going to pass the argument for our connection string. So we have to use configuration manager. That will create a connection between our ASP.NET and database. Configuration manager dot connection string, within the parenthesis we have to establish what connection I am going to establish, that is OLEDB connection dot toString. That toString is nothing but it is a method. It is used to convert our argument into an string characters. Next we have to create a new connection, that is connection is equal to new, what connection we are going to create now? OLEDB. So connection is equal to new OLEDB connection. We have to pass the connection string which we have the values in the previous step. So that should be passed here as an argument. With this four major steps, we can connect our OLEDB database with our ASP.NET application. It is very simple. With this, our process can be made very simple with these four default steps. Next we are going to discuss about OLEDP connection. What is OLEDP and how we are going to connect? We have created the command to connect and how it is going to be connected. Let us see now. To create a OLEDP connection, first we have to import system.data.oledb namespace. So in order to create a connection, we have to import system.data.oledb namespace. We need this namespace to work in Microsoft Access and other OLEDP database providers. Very known database providers are the Microsoft Access. To use Microsoft Access and other OLEDB database providers, we have to import system.data.oledb. We will create the connection to the database in the page load subroutine. So we have to create the connection in page load subroutine. Subroutines are nothing but this is a set of instructions, or we can call it a set of codes, or we can even call it as a function or a method in which we are going to create the connection to the database. We create a dbcon variable as a new OLEDB connection class with a connection string which identifies the OLEDB provider and location of the database. So after writing the connection to the database in page load subroutine, we create a variable name dbcon. It can be any name, so it's a variable, so we can call it as any name. Here I am using dbcon. That is a new OLEDB connection class. I have created it as a class, new OLEDB connection class with a connection string that is going to identify the OLEDB provider and location of the database. The connection string keyword supported by the OLEDB.NET data provider are same as those supported by the IBM OLEDB provider for DB2. This provider is no longer tested. Users are recommended to use the IBM data server provider for .NET. Also, the OLEDB.NET data provider has the same restrictions as IBM DB2 OLEDB provider. How Microsoft Access is one major part we work. IBM also have created an OLEDB.NET server which we can use to develop our web pages. An OLEDB connection string contains all the information your ASP.NET application needs to connect to a database. So, by connecting our OLEDB database into ASP.NET, what are the informations we have in our ASP.NET application? It will be combined to our database OLEDB. Dreamweaver inserts this string in your pages server side script for later processing by your application server. Dreamweaver is also an application. Dreamweaver provides you with the string templates to create OLEDB connection strings for ASP.NET applications. So what is the use of Dreamweaver? Dreamweaver provides a string template to that helps to create OLEDB connection strings for our ASP.NET applications. To create a connection string, you replace placeholders in the template with the requested parameter values. This section gives sample parameters for Microsoft Access and SQL server databases. So we can use either Microsoft Access or the IBM provider applications to connect our OLEDB and our ASP.NET applications. So this is how an OLEDB connection is made using the SQL commands provided. These are the script we have used to collect OLEDB and our ASP.NET application. First we have to import the namespace system.data.oledb. Next we have to write a script for establishing the connection between our database and our ASP.NET application. Script run at server sub. So we have to write the subroutine in the page load subroutine. So sub page load. Next we are creating a variable called dbcon. So we have to mention the dbcon. So dbcon is used to create a new connection. So dbcon is equal to new OLEDB connection. We have to specify the provider. Provider is equal to Microsoft.jet.oledb.4.0. That is the Microsoft Access provider in which we are going to connect our database. We have specified the connection. Now we are going to specify our data source. Data source is equal to ampersand server dot map path. We have to map the path, that is where our data is located in our system. So we have to map the path and we have to specify our data source. We have established the connection. We have given the location of our data source. Now we have to open our dbcon. So dbcon dot open. This method, after giving the open method, that establishes the OLEDB connection with our ASP.NET. So now the data source is connected successfully. End sub, and we have to close the script. So this is the simple script to connect our database, OLEDB database, with our ASP.NET application. Okay, now we are going to see about OLEDB connection string builder. An OLEDB connection string combines all the information our ASP.NET application needs to connect to a database. This is the same as our OLEDB connection. How an OLEDB connection string is built, that is discussed here. Okay. After using the open method to establish the connection, we have to close our database connection once our activities are over. Once the required database activities such as data retrieve or modification are completed, it is important to close the connection to release the resources and maintain efficient resource management. The close method provided by the OLEDB connection class serves this purpose. That is, we have created the connection, we have connected our database to our ASP.NET, and all the spaces in memory are allocated to the connection. Now, after retrieving the data from the database or modifying the data from the database are completed, it is our duty, user's duty, to use the close method to diminish the connection between our ASP.NET and our database and release all the resources which are accompanied by the open method and provide a proper source management. So once we have used the open method to establish the connection, we have to use the close method to stop the connection. Then only all our resources will be released and there will be a proper source management. OLEDB connection class serves this purpose, allowing the connection to be closed by invoking the close method. The open method, the close method are already pre-defined, built-in methods. We are going to just invoke it. Invoke method, any pending transactions are rolled back, ensuring the data integrity and connection is released from the database connection via the OLEDB data provider. So before using the close method and closing all our transactions, once all our transactions will be checked, and if any incomplete transactions have occurred, it is rolled back from the start, and after the completion of that transaction only we can close our database connection. That is ensured by our OLEDB data provider. So this is how an OLEDB connection is connected. Our main aim is to connect our ASP.NET application to a database. So first we have to use an OLEDB connection. That is, we have to import a system.data.oldb namespace. After importing the namespace, we have to write the connection in the database page subroutine called page load. After writing that, we have to create a new class for establishing the connection between our network and database, that is dbcon. So after doing that, we can open our database. So here our database OLEDB is connected with our application ASP.NET. So this is about OLEDB connection. The OLEDB connection instance in ASP.NET serves as the bridge for establishing and managing a connection to the source using the OLEDB data provider. That is, we have to connect OLEDB with our ASP.NET. So it serves as a bridge between our OLEDB.NET and ASP.NET. OLEDB is a perfect data provider. It enables execution of SQL commands and facilitates retrieval and manipulation of data. So using this, we can easily retrieve data from our data source, and using open and close methods, we can establish a connection and delete the connection. So we have discussed about ASP.OLEDB connection. Thank you.